Now being recorded.
And we would appreciate if you can have your microphones in mute so the sound is not going to be disturbed at the recording and during our conversations today. So we're really very honored, and we are really welcoming our special guests and the coalition members. We appreciate all of you to join us today at our engagement with external stakeholders session. We are very honored and thankful to have such a strong and renowned group of panelists to share with us on various aspects that we consider that are very relevant at this point in time while we are still traveling through this pandemic situation. So the first two ones are going to be around COVID-19. The first one on impact response and recovery with Rosana Pilling and Catherine Serrano, and the second one regarding lessons learned, where Adriana Velázquez, Alexandra Lembrugger, and Carlos Goubea will share their experiences. And finally, Renata Amaral will coordinate the panel on the role of WTO, TBT agreement, and GRPs in support of medical device regulatory convergence, where Juliana G.C. Pires and Jennifer Stratman will share also her points of view. Without further ado, let me start by introducing all of our panelists. Rosana Pilling is currently Professor Chair of Diagnostics Research at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Director of the International Diagnostics Center. Trained as a medical microbiologist, she was Research Coordinator and Head of Diagnostics Research at the UNICEF UNDP World Bank WHO Special Program for Research and Training in Tropical Diseases in Geneva. Among others, she is a member of the Social Innovation for Health Initiative and the WHO COVID-19 Advisory Panel for developing target product profiles for diagnostic, and also of the Africa CDC Laboratory Working Group for the COVID-19 pandemic response. Through her collaboration with Fondation Mérieux, she organized the Advanced Course on Diagnostics, which over the last 10 years has trained over 350 policymakers in 80 countries. Professor Pilling, among many other distinctions, is the first woman scientist to be awarded the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine's George MacDonald Medal in 2014. As for Catherine Serrano, Katie, she is the director for FDA's Latin America office. Katie has over 15 years of experience in the medical device field, with the last 9 years spent in FDA's Office of In Vitro Diagnostics and Radiological Health in the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. At the FDA, Kathy has worked in a variety of technical policy leadership and management positions, including joining the agency as part of the inaugural class of Commissioners Fellows in 2008, working as a scientist reviewer, and serving as the Diabetes Diagnostic Devices Branch Chief and the Deputy Director of FDA's Division of Chemistry and Toxicology Devices. She also served as the technical and policy lead for the agency's efforts related to laboratory-developed tests. Ms. Serrano received a Bachelor of Science degree in Biomedical Engineering and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Adriana Velázquez Berumen is the group lead on medical devices and in vitro diagnostics at WHO. She holds a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineer from Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico and a master's degree in clinical engineering by Case Western University. Prior to her current role, Ms. Velázquez was General Director for CENETEC, the National Center for Health Technology Excellence in Mexico. In her current role, Ms. Velázquez and her team have developed a wealth of relevant documents for the medtech sector, including the Medical Devices Technical Series, the Baseline Country Survey of Medical Devices, the Compendium of Innovative Technologies for Global Health Concerns, Health Technology Assessment, and the Global Atlas of Medical Devices, among many others. Alexandra Lembrugger is the Regional Advisor for Health Technologies at PAHOS since 2011. He was formerly the Head of Economic Evaluation of Health Technologies at ANVISA from 2001 to 2011. Mr. Lembrugger holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering Engineering by the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Rio de Janeiro, and a master's degree in public policies and government planning by the Universidad Federal de Santa Catarina. He also specialized in health economics and pharmacoeconomy at Universidad Pompeu Fabra. Carlos Gobea graduated in public administration and law and is a holder of a master in business administration degree. He has held several roles at legal area at O'Melveny and Myers and Goulart, Penteado, Lebolino, and Lefoss. In marketing at Unilever, Cortlandt, and Cooper and Lybrand. In the healthcare area, he's held various positions at companies such as Organon Technica and Royal Numico. Mr. Gobea is currently Executive Director at the Ethics Health Institute, Executive President at CBDL, Vice President at Avis, Director at Aviad, and he is also a founding member and President of ALADIV, the Latin American Alliance for the Development of In Vitro Diagnostics. Juliana Gysi Pires is General Coordinator for Regulatory Convergence and Export Barriers and Foreign Trade Analyst from the Ministry of Economy in Brazil. She holds a bachelor and master's degree in international relations by the University of Brasilia. In her current role, Ms. Gysi coordinates the work on regulatory issues, in particular technical barriers to trade and good regulatory practices in the multilateral, regional, and bilateral negotiations and fora, including the WTO Technical Barriers to Trade Committee. And finally, Jennifer Stratman, Director Technical Barriers to Trade at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. She represents the United States at the WTO Technical Barriers to Trade Committee. Mrs. Stratman holds a bachelor's degree in political science by the State University of New York at Fredonia, and also a master's degree in geography, international trade concentration by the University of Buffalo. Prior to her current role, she held various positions at the International Trade Administration, where she advised and assisted U.S. exporters in resolving trade concerns involving standards and conformity assessment in Asia and the Middle East. Mrs. Stratman participated in national regional committees on standardization, trained U.S. and foreign governments officials on standards and conformity assessment, and monitored international standards with potential trade implications. Please welcome them, all of them, to our meeting today, and we will get started with Professor Rosanna Peeling. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and I really like to thank the organizers for allowing me to share with you some of my thoughts on how we could think about the impact and response and recovery of this pandemic on regulation of in vitro diagnostics. And so do I? Yeah, okay, thanks. So in terms of the pandemic, right from the beginning, the of the WHO had urged countries to test. Testing, isolation, and contact tracing are the backbones of the global pandemic. It's really important then for us to think about how to do the testing. Next slide, please. So in terms of the pandemic, what we've learned is, in fact, that we have now a really good recognition, unlike before, that diagnostics is a critical tool in the pandemic response. And although, you know, diagnostic had always been, all of us know that diagnostics are important, but I think that politicians, the press, the public had not realized it before, and the pandemic has brought us that recognition. But also the pandemic response really exposed the fault lines and inequities in a country's healthcare system. There's been in a lot of countries, fragmentation between public health experts and political figures that decided that maybe saving the economy is more important. And this fragmentation has led to confusion about how to fight the pandemic, including how to use the tests, what should the regulations be like, because as I'll show you later, the regulations becomes a lot more complex in the pandemic. And then we are fighting two pandemics. We have a pandemic caused by the virus, but we also have a pandemic caused by a lot of information through social media. Next slide, please. In terms of the response, the first thing that we really happy to see is that there's a lot of sharing of information, especially the early, as soon as the cause of the pandemic was discovered, there was sharing of genomic sequence data, allowing companies, allowing research institutes to start to develop the molecular testing to detect the RNA, so that we have a test for confirming suspect cases. Journals have decided to have open access to all COVID publications, which means that countries that are normally don't have access to a lot of high impact journals now have everyone has equal access to all the scientific knowledge that's been generated and all the clinical information, etc., so that we could have all the weapons necessary to fight this pandemic together. There's also unprecedented response from the diagnostic industry.
No, ¿tienes claras?
Excuse me? Sorry. With more than 850 companies commercializing products that are for detection of either the virus or antibodies or cytokines that are part of the immune response. And there's even more in the pipeline. So overall, there's over 1,000 different tests that we will have at our disposal. And this is despite the late development of the target product profiles from WHO, which are partly meant to stimulate test development. The downside of the response is that because of the global competition for molecular test kits, for reagents and supplies such as swabs, a lot of countries are left with very few choices for how to detect the virus or detect confirmed cases. And they had to innovate on the use of diagnostic tests. And I'll show a little bit of that in the next slide. Next slide. So normally, for any viral infection, we have three types of tests at our disposal. We have molecular tests that are used that detects viral RNA, and they would be the ones to use as soon as symptom onset until about the end of the first week after the onset of symptoms, and that it's used to confirm infection. But another way, in the absence of molecular tests, is to use antigen tests to detect viral proteins. And our experience with other viral infections is that actually the proteins actually stay a bit longer, and so you have a longer window for confirming infection. Finally, we have antibody tests, serology tests, that detect host antibodies, and we usually can start to see detectable levels of antibody from day 7 to about day 40, and is used. These tests are used for detecting exposure and surveillance. And so in terms of using, next slide, please. But for the COVID response, we know from very early on that this slide shows quite a number of studies that show that within the first 7 days after onset of symptoms, for IgM antibodies, we already see between 10% to 70% of patients already have detectable IgM antibodies. And for IgG is anywhere from 5% to about 60%. So unlike other viral infections, we could actually use antibodies very early on in the first week after onset of symptoms. Next slide, please. And so some countries, because patients typically present late because the symptoms are very nonspecific, or they hesitate to present for care until they have difficulties breathing. And so because of that, some countries have resorted to using both molecular and antibody assays. And you could see from this study that within the first week after onset of symptoms, in 94 patients, if you use a combination of RNA and antibody testing, you could detect 79% of the cases versus only 67 if you only use RNA. And then in the second week after onset of symptoms, the combination of tests will give you 97% versus only 54% when you use RNA tests. So this is also very important for delayed case finding as well as contact tracing. Next slide, please. And in some countries, such as Peru, we saw that in a population of 32 million, there are only 500 ICU beds, and because they have very limited number of testing facilities. At the time that this was introduced, there was a backlog of about 7,000 molecular tests waiting. And when the results of these testing are being returned maybe 1 or 2 weeks after the specimens are collected, then you don't have the option to do for your public health action. And so I think something needed to be done when you have such a huge backlog. And so in Peru, the government set up a hotline and a website allowing those who have symptoms to call or connect, and the team would actually go to the home and test them within minutes. And if the person is positive, they will be put into isolation, or the severe cases would be hospitalized. But anybody who's negative would have another swab collected for molecular testing, and that way the rapid triage of the symptomatic individuals relieve the backlog of molecular testing and prevent the health system from being overwhelmed. Next slide, please. And so in terms of right now, we also have about 7 or 8 rapid antigen tests that are available. And here in this table, I show you some of the tests that are available. And the hallmark of all these tests is that the results can be available anywhere from 12 minutes to 20 minutes. Some of them require a small instrument, but most of them are available as dipstick type tests, very easy to do anywhere. And one of them actually has a QR code where you could show the results to anybody who could scan the QR code as your result as being negative. And so we have now quite a variety of tests that we could use, but so would allow us to scale up testing. But where can we use these tests? Next slide, please. So in thinking about scaling up the testing response, we look at access options. Of course, in the traditional healthcare sector, They could be available, both molecular and antigen tests could be available in hospitals, in clinics, and community venues such as care homes for a quick confirmation of clinically suspect cases, but also to monitor healthcare workers who care for vulnerable people, especially in care homes. But then we also would like to think that these rapid antigen tests can be used in other community venues such as restaurants, gyms, shopping centers, mass gatherings such as concerts, sports events. Maybe we will have self-tests that are available by mail, and also there will be border crossings that where we have to show that we're negative. So then the regulation of these in vitro devices become a lot more complex. Next slide, please. Because we always insist that regulation is the gateway to the quality continuum for diagnostic tests. And if we don't guarantee that there's quality at every step of the way, even after regulatory approval, such as where the tests are stored, what the testing quality, especially when it's done by non-professional lab staff, and also the reporting, who will get the test results to act on them. I think that we need to be very careful about the approval of tests for these out of the ordinary uses of these tests. And that is something for which harmonization and convergence of standards becomes really important, because it would be a disaster if every country start to make their own rules about what to do. Next slide, please. So we have no time to lose, really. The most urgent needs for global public health today are for quality assured medical devices, including in vitro diagnostics, to address the epidemic preparedness, as well as an ongoing global crisis of antimicrobial resistance that we need to pay attention to, because for a lot of care of COVID patients, a lot of presumptive use of antibiotics is reversing a lot of the gains that we have with antimicrobial resistance. So we really need countries to adopt existing standards for regulatory approval. We need harmonization, convergence, and also we need to accelerate access through a joint review of risks and benefits of these new tests to avoid duplications and delays. And I just want to show you an example of a project that we're involved in. Next slide, please. Where we would like to see whether there are options for policymakers and regulators coming together around the same table to assess risks and benefits of a new test, rather than doing it sequentially. And that way we could have a more standardized approach, as well as a faster approach in terms of the regulatory review process and approval. And so this is funded by the Wellcome Trust, and the principal investigator are myself and David Heyman from Chatham House in the UK. And we like to conduct regional consultations as to what are the options for joint review of clinical performance data to accelerate the access to diagnostics. Next slide, please. So in terms of recovery, what are we thinking of? Next slide, please. So global health emergencies, the huge emergencies, used to come maybe around every 10 years. But ever since we had the SARS in 2003, the flu outbreak of 2009, and then when MERS-CoV emerged in the Middle East, from then onwards, we had a continuous series of outbreaks of viral infections. So they are becoming more frequent and more severe. And we really need to be much more prepared. Next slide, please. And so in terms of recovery, you know, if we think about the mantra that's been put around the pandemic, no one is safe until everyone is safe. So this requires greater global cooperation, including all the different complex regulatory aspects of these new diagnostics, not only in terms of complexity of where they will be used, but also who would use them. And we have them in such great numbers. If we don't cooperate, it would be a disaster, because it will be very slow for each country to try and do this on their own. And out of the recovery, we hope that we have now more resilient healthcare systems that provide more people-centered services and include services, and also with the surge capacity to be able to cope with outbreaks, and then in peacetime to be able to do the research to better understand these diseases of epidemic potential. But one thing that we need to think about is that with the pandemic, we have a lot of digitalization, and we're really generating a lot of data. And so there's a need for guidance on data governance, access, and sharing. Next slide, please. So I would like to end with something that I learned from a much earlier on session on how can we get faster, better, safer, cheaper regulation of health products at the Health Pacific Summit, which was in London in 2000, I think, and 9. The purpose of this panel is really to examine the relationship between regulation and innovation. And we really like to think that regulation can actually stimulate innovation instead of being called upon as an audit system to establish guilt. And so I think that we need to, with this pandemic and the need for simpler and more streamlined regulation of health products to cope with these global health emergencies, we need to everybody to think of regulation as something to stimulate innovation, rather than to think of it as a huge barrier that companies need to go through. And so to frame our conversations in a different light. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Professor Pilling, thank you very much for your participation. I think all the information that you have shared with us, it is really very relevant and is going to be very useful for the members of the coalition and the MedTech community in general. Thank you very much. And now I would like to transfer to Katie Serrano for her to share her views. Thank you.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and I apologize. Yes, I can hear you, and I wanted to apologize to the participants. I was not able to navigate the technology this morning, and I was only able to join by phone. But I do want to say thank you to all of the organizers and to the previous panelists for having me present today and giving me this opportunity. For those that don't know me, I'm Katie Serrano. I'm the director of FDA's Latin America office. I'm actually based in San Jose, Costa Rica. We have our regional office covers all of FDA's products in all of Latin America, and we actually do have 2 other offices in the region, but our headquarters are based here in Costa Rica. The other offices are located in Mexico and Chile. I'm really pleased to talk about this topic because I think it's so relevant, obviously, given the situation that we're all experiencing throughout the entire world. I think from the very start of this crisis, our agency knew that it was imperative that we maintain our high standards for evaluating products and make sure that the benefits of products intended to be used in response to this pandemic outweighed the potential harms of those products. But yet still, we had to move quickly to make decisions, set direction, and yet be very transparent about what we were doing. This pandemic has been a very dynamic and constantly evolving situation. And I think if there's one thing that we've seen reaffirmed in this last year, it's really how important medical devices and including diagnostics really are to healthcare generally, and specifically encountering this particular pandemic. I think luckily we feel really confident that we've had policies in place that have been able to strike the right balance of ensuring critical independent review by the scientific and public health experts, and by making timely medical products available to the public. In terms of response, the FDA has a really important tool at our disposal that has been really critical in our ability to respond effectively to this pandemic. And really, it's called the Emergency Use Authorization Mechanism. This is a mechanism that's different than our typical authorization pathways at the FDA. Because it gives a little bit more opportunity for critical products to be able to be authorized for use only during the pandemic and with a slightly different approval standard. So instead of demonstrating safe and effectiveness, it shows these products will demonstrate safety with and probable benefit in response to COVID. And it's important to know that that is a slightly different authorization standard, but that it is only temporary during the duration of the actual pandemic. I think that's been a really important mechanism for us because it's allowed us to be very fast and agile in making decisions that take into account the benefit risk profile that's unique to an emergency situation, and allowing products to be made available to the general public for a response to that situation. Obviously that primary mechanism of those emergency authorizations has been made very well use of. We've had over 5,000 requests for EUAs since February, and we've authorized the emergency use of over 550 medical devices, including more than 290 tests. Roughly, that's a rate of that amounts to basically authorizing on average one test every single day since this began. So it's been an incredibly fast rate, and that emergency mechanism has allowed us to be able to make those products available, which is so critical in the response. The other part of, I think, what FDA has done throughout the response has been to really try to work with manufacturers directly on the situation, understanding what their needs are, understanding what our scientific needs are, and trying to find the right balance of the path to move forward. The other tool that we've really used is trying to be as transparent as possible about our decision making. We've actually issued many different guidances that describe in great detail the scientific standard that we're looking for when we're making the authorization decisions for the different types of devices and products that we've authorized during this emergency. So these guidance documents really clearly describe what we expect to see in the submission, the data, the types of studies that we are looking for, and the actual performance that we'd be looking for to make that authorization decision. And the idea of putting all of this information in the public is to allow that innovation to happen, is to help companies who are interested in making products that can respond to this emergency, have them know from the get-go what the goalpost is and where it is, so that they're able to ensure that they can meet it before they send their submission in, and to make sure that no one's wasting any time, because frankly, we just don't have time to waste in this situation. We've also been doing a lot of outreach to companies that are not traditional medical device manufacturers. There have been a lot of companies that have wanted to make things like hand sanitizers, PPE, that had never made it before. And so we made a lot of resources available to them on our webpage to make sure that they had what they needed to be able to quickly change over their manufacturing production to make these important products to respond to the emergency. One of the benefits of the emergency use authorization mechanism is that it does allow us to make decisions quickly, but then look backwards and see when perhaps we're seeing issues with products that were made available. And certainly in this pandemic situation, we've seen that happen. We had made decisions at the beginning of the pandemic that allowed more, let's say, diagnostic devices to be available to the public. But then later on, we noticed that there were some real performance problems with some of those devices that were authorized in the early days. And FDA took action against those products, removing them from the market and getting information out to the public about those products. And I think that agility has been really key to us being able to learn from the experience that we're all going through, readjust our sales, and continue moving forward. I think another tool that's been really, really important for our response in FDA, but I think globally as well, and I think for the part of our Latin America office, is we've done a lot of outreach to different regulatory agencies throughout our region. Our group has actually put together a newsletter that goes out just about weekly now. I think in the beginning it was almost daily, that explained all of the different actions that FDA was taking, guidance documents that were put out, et cetera, to try to raise awareness about what FDA was doing, what standards we were using in terms of the scientific standards for authorization, et cetera, to make sure that not only companies knew what the standards were, but actually other countries that were also struggling to respond to the pandemic could leverage the work that we had done to their advantage, so that we're not all individually reinventing the wheel, over and over again. And so I think that's been a really important tool. Regulators in our region have had many discussions about different regulatory challenges that have arisen, and I think those discussions, sharing of information has been key to all of us being able to move forward more or less in the same direction to respond effectively to this pandemic. And I think in the meantime, of course, we were focused really heavily on products that specifically related to COVID, but also we knew as an agency that we also needed to respond to the collateral effects of the pandemic, such as the need for technologies that help protect patients and providers from exposure to COVID by better enabling social distancing measures and to facilitate the ability of patients to receive their health care remotely. So to that end, we issued policies for medical imaging equipment, remote monitoring devices, and ophthalmic and other devices. We provided regulatory flexibility for certain design changes that would enhance the functionality of these devices under the circumstances caused by the pandemic, and made adjunctive digital health therapeutics for psychiatric conditions more readily available. So obviously, moving forward, there's going to be a lot to do. There's going to be a lot of research and exploration, discovery, and communicating what we know and what we've learned throughout the last 9 or 10 months or so. I think one of the major strengths of FDA has been not just our response to the crisis, but in general, it's always in our ability to learn from the work that we do and apply that experience to the future. As the pandemic evolved, it was really clear that some FDA processes needed to be adjusted to accommodate the urgency of the pandemic. I think the entire FDA team has now seen firsthand that we need to look at some of those policies and processes, identify lessons learned, and really hone in on the adjustments that may need to be made, not just to manage this or future emergencies, but to make the FDA itself more efficient in carrying out our regulatory responsibilities. To the extent that innovations and adaptations be implemented during the pandemic crisis worked and would be appropriate to implement outside of a pandemic situation, we will incorporate them into standard FDA procedures. And to that extent, we identified unnecessary barriers, and if we see those unnecessary barriers, we will remove them. Permanent change where needed will take place, and we believe it will make FDA an even stronger agency. As I mentioned before, anything that enables quicker reviews and authorizations, we will seek to make permanent. However, I think this is really important, we will not cut corners on safety or performance. good science as the basis for decision making has always been a hallmark of our agency. And the American public, as well as the world, must have confidence in the products regulated by the FDA. Speed's important, but so are safety, accuracy, and effectiveness. And so with that, we'll look forward to continue working closely with other regulatory authorities, as well as the industry and academia, as we fulfill our mission. And that mission really is to deliver on the promise of science with data-driven results, rigorous scientific research and analysis to protect the health of the American public. Thank you very much.
Katie, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And I think there's kind of like a lot of learnings that are coming out of what we have been going through. I think it is like a lifetime situation, once in a lifetime situation that we are all facing. So we are really looking forward for all of us within the medical technology ecosystem to incorporate all these learnings, and for the ones, as you have already mentioned, that have demonstrated that are useful and that could provide benefits for our quote-unquote normal life, could have a room for a stand implementation. I don't see any questions coming from the audience, but I'd like to ask to both of you whether you would be living through this situation again. What are kind of like the hallmarks that you would consider as being like the decisive factors to succeed to the level we can still quote it like that on this situation? What are the key success factors that you can identify? Rosanna, Professor Pilling, probably we can start with you.
Yes, I think that I think what Catherine has presented has really shown us in this pandemic the leadership that a stringent regulatory authority like the FDA, the kind of leadership and the sharing of information that they have been doing is just remarkable, and this is something that we need to not only do during a pandemic, but during peacetime. We need to be thinking about how to use the opportunity when there's no outbreak to build capacity for this kind of sharing, and also I guess bringing other regulatory authorities up to date with principles of harmonization and convergence, so that we don't have a lot of different regulations that manufacturers are facing anytime that they need to try to commercialize a product. And I think this leadership and sharing are, I think, the most important principles in terms of and convergence, of course. Over.
Thank you, Professor Pilling. Katie, any final comment?
No, thank you very much. And I guess I'll just emphasize that point as well. I agree that the sharing of information, the transparency of decision making was so important for us in our agency, and I think for the companies that were looking to make products to respond to this crisis, but also for all of the other regulatory agencies to be able to compare and contrast decision making to make sure that they could make the best decisions possible for their populations in a way that considers sort of how other regulatory authorities might be approaching those problems. And again, we had some excellent discussions among different regulators about our decision making, and we did not all agree all the time, but we had a really good understanding about why each of these agencies was making the decisions they made. And ultimately, I think that improved all of our decision making and hopefully made a more consistent approach worldwide. that allowed more products to be available. You know, this, in a situation like this, I think fundamentally no country can do this by themselves. None of us can do this by ourselves. We needed to work together, and I think fundamentally we need to learn to do that better in all times, not just in crises.
Thank you very much, Katie. So Professor Pilling, Katie, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with the coalition members today. And then we will get started with our next panel, Lessons Learned from COVID-19. And I would like to invite Adriana Velázquez to take the floor. Adriana, welcome. Adriana, can you hear me? Okay. It seems that we are having an issue with Adriana's connection. So I don't know if we can then get started with Alexandra Lemgruber. So we can get going, and then we will get back to Adriana once we can get her reconnected.
Hi. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I suppose you have my slides, correct?
Yes, I do. I will start projecting them in a bit.
So let me see if my camera can work here. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes. So just quick check, please.
Yeah, but then I cannot see my slides. Let's see if I can move this. It's my first time with this platform, so. Okay, I think I will just close my camera, okay? Just during the presentation. Here for the questions we can open again.
Okay, perfect. So just a quick second. So can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So so everybody can see, I suppose it's not in the presentation mode, but I'm fine. I don't know if everybody can see well, that's okay. So I'll talk today about, in the first part of the presentation, about our PAHO regional work on regulation medical devices. And then the second part of the presentation, I will address specific issues related to the COVID-19 response. So this is the regional working group. All the countries that are represented in the regional working group was established in 2012. We can move to the next one, please. I think I don't have the control, no? Or I do have the control for the slides? No, okay. Thank you. So this is a kind of summary of the activities we developed with the regional working group on medical device regulation. So we had like annual regional meetings, since at least one meeting, some of the years more than one. This is the first year we are not meeting face to face. And also we will talk about our open sessions with stakeholders. I think many of you have already participated in those stakeholder sessions that we have been holding since 2016. I would address in a minute our capacity building activities that we are with a partnership with SICMED, the regulatory authority in Cuba, which is WHO Collaborating Center, and also INVIMA, which is the regulatory authority in Colombia. And I will talk about in a few minutes. Also, we will address our collaboration with IMDRF, with the mirror groups, our participation in working groups, the dissemination of documents, etc. Also, some of the technical groups. We have a technical group on reuse and reprocessing medical devices and National Implant Registry. Also, the work we are doing and have been doing in medical device indicators. we have developed a few years ago a set of basic indicators. We published a paper a few years ago. You may be aware of this. Also, we had a pilot with 5 countries around 3 years ago on with advanced indicators, and then WHO is leading, and I suppose Adriano will address this. WHO is leading now the discussion of integrating the medical device indicators into the global benchmark tool, and the PAHOS indicators are one of the important references in this process. Also have the community practices when the regulation medical device, and also the REDMA program. I will talk about the REDMA program in a minute. Next, please. Yeah, this is very quickly just to show for those who did not participate in those open sessions. So since 2016, we always reserve a day of in our agenda for the regional meetings of medical device regulation for the open session, which is very similar to the IMDRF stakeholder session, when we can have a dialogue with the private sector, and you can see I'm not reading all the information, but you can see the topics that have been discussing during those meetings. So every year, and now I cannot see anymore the slides, but so every year we open this opportunity for discussing those topics with the private sector. So I think it has been a very productive dialogue, as you can see every year. And the last meeting was September 19 in Colombia. We can move to the next one, please.
Can see the imagine. The images. Everyone can see it.
I can see. I can
Yes.
see.
Okay.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
give me a second,
Yeah.
because there it seems to be like a technical problem here while sharing. Just a second, please.
Yeah, I can see it's in the regional meetings with the open session right now. If you can move to the next one, because I don't think I have the control here. Yes, thank you. So now about the training activities, which is a very important component of our working plan. We developed some in-person and face-to-face activities. I mentioned 2 of them, was more like the recent ones in last year. And so I think everybody misses the opportunities of meeting face-to-face. So it was the last ones. We hope we can do this very soon again. We together with the Ibero-American of Regulation IAMI network, we developed this in Uruguay, the seminar in Uruguay, and also INVIMA hosted this post-marketing surveillance workshop last year in Bogota. So with this, we have around already 60 representatives from the regulatory authorities in the region. Now I can see just a blank slide. If you can please go back to the one, but I can keep talking. So the virtual activities also, we are of course still developing the virtual training. Right now at this very moment, we have around 300 participants in our course, was coordinated by INVIMA. That's the one that it's mentioned in the bottom of the right-hand side, the virtual model of technical vigilance. As I said, we have more than 300 participants. So if we count all the 3 last training sessions, we have more than 400 representatives from 32 countries, with the Spanish and English-speaking countries on post-marketing surveillance, and also of the REDMA program, which is the program for the exchange of adverse events reports. I will talk about in a minute more about this. Can you go to the next one, please? So our collaboration with the IMDRF is an important part of our working plan as well. Those are the IMDRF working groups and the representatives of the regional working group in each of those IMDRF working groups. So You can see we are right now, we have representation for IMDRF working groups, or we had in the past, or we currently have, and we are about to ask for participation in more working groups. You can move to the next one because I think my time is running very fast. Also, one of the agreements in our last year, when we have the last meeting in Russia, we had approval from IMDRF to translate some of the documents that was a request from member states, so to facilitate the dissemination of those documents in the region. So we translate six documents in Spanish, and 3 of them also in Portuguese. We request from Brazil, and those documents are already in final editing. So we hope to disseminate them in the next few weeks. So we can move to the next one, please. Also, what we call the IMDRF mirror working groups. So what's the difference between the technical working groups and just the mirror working groups? The mirror ones are the exactly the same subject as the IMDRF working groups, just is a regional group. So that's discuss and work on the same topics, and of course taking advantage of the work that they've been doing in those IMDRF working groups. So we have a diverse event terminology, personalized medical device, good regulatory review practice. You can see the coordinator of the regulatory authority that's coordinating each of these groups. And I think one very good example is the one that's in the left-hand side is the NCAR exchange program, which started. The REDMA program was the origin of this. Is a program for exchanging adverse event reports. And this was the beginning and the seed that led to the creation of the REDMA program, which is now a well-established program that regulatory authorities can use a secure platform to exchange information on adverse events. Those are not public alerts. Those are processes that are under investigation, but the regulatory authorities can use this very safe and secure platform to exchange information, and right now they already exchange information around 30 reports on adverse events. So this was a very good example of how a IMDRF mirror working group can have a very important results and in the region. Okay, we can move to the next one, please. So now in the second part of the presentation, it's regarding specifically in the context of COVID-19 and all the challenges that we have been facing, and everybody has been facing, all the countries, but specifically in the region, what also we have in the region working group, and PAHO has been working and dissemination of information. So whereas as we are disseminating alerts from the regulatory authorities, we have regulatory updates, weekly regulatory updates that we send to all countries that are shared by regulatory authorities in the region. We are publishing technical guidelines. I will share in a moment some of the publications. We have a regulatory a specific group of regulatory authorities for COVID-19 issues that we have webinars and virtual meetings to share experiences and promote cooperation among countries in the region. And also we had a specific working group on ventilators, and so we in the context of COVID was not only on regulatory issues in this case, but also trying to identify and to share experience between the groups that were developing innovations in the context of the COVID-19 response, and how the regulatory authorities were facing this challenging. And we know we identified more than 20 projects in the region. And then some of those projects has already received regulatory authorization, and there was a very interesting discussion, and we can share more information if there's interest. In terms of the technical support, we also we are supporting and our procurement process in the region in the quality assurance and some of them are, and I'm sure Adriana will mention this afterwards. Some of them are through. We have this group with WHO and other regional offices when we discuss quality assurance issues. We also have at the regional level, local regional procurement when we are also working on quality assurance for regional procurement. We also have a local national procurement, and the member states ask for our advice and technical support in relation to those evaluation. And some of the training session, and I think this is not, I mentioned through PAHO, but also it's also through WHO, the procurement. Sorry about that. The training sessions, and we are developing training sessions from the requests from member states on the not only quality assurance but also in the management of in the use of some of those equipments. For example, oxygen concentrators. We can move to the next one, please. So this is an important document for our topic, the topic on reliance. This is available in our website, and this is reliance for emergency use authorization of medicines and other health technologies. This is it's more targeted to pharmaceuticals, vaccines, and IVDs. But I really invite you to go to the PAHO website and have a look in this document. I think it has very useful information. We can move to the next one, please, which I think is the last one. So those are the publications on medical device in the context of COVID-19 that are, I think, most important. Yeah, the first one is the list of priority medical devices, and the last version was in August. And I think the very first one was back in March. But in the latest versions were totally aligned with WHO lists. At the beginning, we developed a separate list, but then for obvious reasons, we decided to work together, and it was a very coordinated effort and was led by Adriana, and I'm sure she will address this as well. So right now we have a unified list of priority medical devices in the context of COVID-19 by level of care. So, for example, we are about to publish in PAHO a list of a document on primary, on the first level of care. And then you can see, for example, one of the chapters is on a primary medical device for the first level of care for COVID-19. Another document, it was in the technical regulatory aspects of the use of pulse oximeters. So is another one that is a very important medical device in this context. Another one is the post-authorization surveillance. This is not specific on devices, it's also in pharmaceutical and devices, so you can, but there's a section on medical devices in this document. The other one that's is on regulatory aspects in the extended use, reuse, and reprocessing of respirators, which is the critical issue and during the shortest period. And also is the document on regulation of medical devices in the context of COVID-19 response. So I think that's it. This the very last document I think is important to mention. It's not. I mean, it's not a document that we develop a document at PAHO. So it's we identify in the regulatory authorities important information. So we put together those informations, and we put this in the documents that we can update. We in fact we have to update this, and then we share this with other regulatory authorities so they can see, they can learn from other experiences in the region regarding how the other regulatory authorities are addressing those important challenges related to COVID-19 regulatory response. Thank you very much for the attention.
Alexandre, thank you very much for your sharing. I would like now to welcome Adriana Velázquez to share her perspectives. Adriana, you have been promoted as a presenter, so you can share your slides if you wish.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to share my screen.
we could see it, but we cannot see your slides.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just go there. I think can you see them now?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Let me just see if that works. I'll just see how to. That's the slide.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So now I'm all set. Thank you. First, thank you for the invitation. I will be talking about the priority medical devices and the model list for essential in vitro diagnostics, and specifically the challenges and lessons learned, especially for COVID. And as you all know, and I will just have twice this slide because I think it is very important that we all acknowledge that medical devices are indispensable to test, treat patients, but also to protect healthcare workers, as we can see with the PPE, then the in vitro diagnostics, and then all the intensive care units. As you know, we consider medical devices scope includes
Sorry,
PPE.
I cannot see the presentation.
You cannot
Me
see the
either. I
presentation?
can't see. No, either. And before
Yes.
I couldn't see it too.
We have no presentations, only no one is
Turn on my
sharing the
webcam.
webcam.
That's it. Since the last one.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes,
No.
yes, okay now.
Okay, let me see if
can't see.
I change the slide.
And please, if you could speak lower, please, it will be helpful.
Thank you. Let me go again. Let me just make sure that you see the presentation again. Okay, can you see the presentation now?
Yes, Adriana, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If I change the slide, can you see it? No, something. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go slower. So, as you all know, as a process to ensure access to appropriate health technologies, we have the three big aspects: the regulation, the health technology assessment or selection, and then the management or procurement. In the area of regulation, as Alexander said, we are updating the global benchmarking tool, and this is a work that we started since 2009, then 13, 15, 18, 19, and finally, WHO is updating it. So there is ongoing work, and we know there are staff from FDA and from Brazil and many other regulatory authorities around the world that are participating in weekly meetings on Tuesdays to update the global benchmarking tool. That has remote meetings until the end of this year and will continue the first quarter of next year. As you can see, the value chain, we start with innovation, then we go to health technology assessment, that's really the priority lists. Then we go to the regulatory approval, and then we go to the management. And none of these areas could be missing. So we really need to go through all the areas to ensure that there is good access to safe and quality medical devices. What we have done is that we have done the Global Atlas of Medical Devices, which, by the way, is being updated right now in December 2020. And that lists, for example, where are the priority medical devices, if they're available or not, do we have or not regulatory agencies, etc. So with the priority list, what we want to do is the same as the essential medicines list, to ensure that what we do in our headquarters, we publish the list after going through expert groups and consultations. We publish the list, and this list will go to the countries so that they can facilitate the availability of these products in their health system. what we had done in the past was 2015, the priority devices for reproductive health. Then we developed in 2017 for cancer management. We started the selection of the in vitro diagnostics. You see my screen because I don't see again.
We lost it again.
Again.
I don't know why it's lost, because I'm doing exactly the same thing, but let me go back again.
Perfect. Now we
Okay,
can.
then
Yes.
we have the reproductive health. Then for cancer management, then we started doing the selection of in vitro diagnostics. And then we were working in 2020 on the cardiovascular, stroke, and diabetes, but it was exactly when the COVID hit. And so our priorities were changed. Anyway, we started looking into the health conditions, we review guidelines, we do the interventions, we select the technologies, we go through experts groups, and then we publish the publications. What we used to do is, for those list of priority devices, we develop technical specifications to ensure that they will be available. So sometimes we were doing like one or two big specifications over a year. And then all of a sudden, when COVID hit, then we started requesting, countries were asking us, please give us technical specifications. Please, we need to procure very quickly. So we started doing the updating technical specifications for ventilators, pulse oximeters, infusion pumps, and also we met with the Atomic Energy Agency to start working on specifications for imaging equipment. All of those information we will put together by the end of this year or January next year, about 1,500 types of medical devices into MEDEVIS, Medical Device Information System. And that will include all the information that we have: regulatory information, procurement information, technical specification, classification. At the same time, we're working in the essential diagnostic list to really ensure that the diagnostics are available for UN procurement, but also for countries. The essential diagnostic list had about 122 test categories for community and for community and health settings without laboratories, and also for healthcare facilities with clinical laboratories. And they go organized by discipline, but they also go organized by disease. So we were working on that, and we were working on the third EDL that includes the test purpose, test format, specimen type, and the clinical usefulness. And then all this work was ongoing during 2020 when the COVID hit. So now we said we cannot release the third EDL unless we add the SARS-CoV NAT and antigen test. So now we had extraordinary meetings to be able to add these tests. And all these tests will also be available through an electronic version, which was postponed. Instead of March 2020, we're moving to December 2020 or January 2021, so that you can find all the information for all the in vitro tests, and then be able to have all the information and the recommendations why they were added to the list or not. And all this information will also accompany a global nomenclature and EDL version about the essential diagnostic. When COVID hit, as I told you, this was the second time that I present this slide, because we have to consider all the devices for the intensive care unit, all the devices for in vitro diagnostics, and all the devices used for personal protective equipment. So to the selection of books that we had already, we had to ask this one. So this is a new one that is Priority Medical Devices for COVID Test and Associated Technical Specifications, that became available just 2 weeks ago. And the selection of use and in vitro diagnostics, it's now been finally edited and laid out, and that includes already the COVID test. So everything was totally got shifted from priorities. And if you download this link, you will find the Priority Medical Devices. It includes about 75 medical devices. It includes the link to all the clinical interventions and all the clinical management guidelines for COVID, the most updated ones up to September this year. Then you include all the devices that are needed for protection, diagnosis, treatment, and palliation for all of the COVID related from primary, secondary, and tertiary care. And you will include about 100 technical specifications, and this will include the standards they have to comply with and the regulatory process they'll have to go through. We also released about 3 weeks ago technical specifications and quality assurance and standards for personal protective equipment. That is including surgical masks, non-surgical. It includes about 20 products. And these are all available, and they're being translated, at least they will be translated to 6 official languages. All these technical specifications were used to provide information about the emergency global supply chain system, and this has been updated every month at least to add new products into this. And I would like to acknowledge that all this work was done along with our counterparts from Europe and working a lot with PAHO and their consultants, as you would see. All this catalog was put into the global supply portal and has been providing information for at least procurement of supply for 120 low and middle income countries. But we didn't stop there. We're also listening to innovations. So we have a channel for innovations. We have received 240 innovations, which are going through the submission portal. They are being assessed. They invite the innovators to come and present, and then we're reviewing the regulatory part, the health technology assessment part, the health technology management part, and if approved, they will go to the emergency supply or will be published in the WHO compendium. We're also receiving requests for research and development, technology, local production, and technology transfer. So we're working with the Technology Access Pool, we're working with the Technology Access Partnership, and we're providing information for local production of these products. We released a newsletter every month in which we have been publishing everything that we're doing and even requests for consultants. And now we have this month 30 consultants that are working with us. Nevertheless, I would like to mention that another thing that's very important, and we're also working on that, is about the nomenclature for medical devices. So what we did is we removed everything that was done before. We added the new nomenclature that adds the COVID medical devices and diagnostics. And that is already hosted in the ICD-11, and this is using the European medical devices nomenclature because that is the only one that is publicly available for now. We're still working with GMBN, UMDNS, and all UNSPSC to try to find convergence for all the nomenclatures. We have also a page that releases the information safety and also regulatory updates that are done every 15 days. In WHO. We have a new page for in vitro diagnostics, for PPE, and for medical devices, and that is updated at least every 3 weeks. So in conclusions, we are updating has methodologies and products for selection and regulate essential and priority medical devices. They are based on evidence and expert groups. They are being updated as soon as possible, mostly every 3 weeks. And this is to support countries to support universal health coverage, the emergencies, and well-being. Thank you very much.
Adriana, thank you very much for sharing. This is very valuable information for all the members of the coalition and the general community within the medical technology sector. Now, I would like to transfer to Carlos Gouveia. You can also share, okay. Those are your slides. Thank you very much. Carlos, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. It's a pleasure to be here with so many nice colleagues that for quite a long time we don't see personally, but at least virtually we can meet. So today I'm going to make a little bit of express a little bit of our experience and share with you all in times of COVID. And the first lesson that we have learned is that alone we cannot do anything. That's very clear. And just by collecting efforts from all the different stakeholders and associations and entities like you can see here, it's possible really to go ahead. And ALADI, which is the Latin American Alliance for the Development of In Vitro Diagnostic, is exactly this, has this meaning. It has been only possible to act thanks to the effort of so many different actors from the government, from the academy, from the industry. And all together, we have been able actually to share a lot of experience, especially in terms of regulatory convergence, quality aspects, access, and many other important discussions that you have been seeing. In terms of experience, we know a lot that we have science fiction or sometimes reality. Are you following? Let me just see. Can you see this slide?
It's okay. It's okay. Go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So this is it's science fiction or reality. If you realize that some years ago, Mr. Spock would scan somebody and actually get a full prognostics of the person, that's actually reality. And in terms of diagnostic world, we have been seeing so many developments, especially in terms of point of care devices. For molecular platforms nowadays, you don't need huge equipments. You actually can really work with very small and efficient devices on the bench or very close to the patient. For the COVID, actually, that's a very important aspect. And when we talk about modern and up-to-date devices, we mean even cassettes for the rapid test that is available. The technology embedded in such a small item is really fantastic. And especially if you can actually translate it to modern networks using your computer, using your mobile phone, or existing networks that actually can share the information. From a public policy point of view, that's really very important. With national or regional surveillance networks, the power of getting this information provided by the diagnostic item or reagent is fantastic, especially if you can map the hot zones and actually take immediately after an important decision or action in terms of containing the spread of the virus and actually taking actions in terms of providing access to correct therapies. Brazil has had some quite interesting experiences. If you realize, we had a fantastic plan in the beginning. The idea was to reach at least 46 million people with molecular and rapid tests. So far, just a few have actually become true in terms of Ministry of Health. However, with a very important support from the private sector. Some other lessons we also learned from existing structure, network of central labs, but also from other areas like the HIV, hepatitis, and syphilis department that shared their own experience in different public programs with the pandemic response. We hope that a little bit of this whole effort for building a network of molecular labs is going to be a legacy. That's probably going to be very useful for the future. But in terms of lessons learned, the idea is really to present what was the initial strategy from the private sector together with the public area in order to achieve some good results. We split in three main areas: access, quality, and mass testing. For access, CPDL in Brazil, the In Vitro Diagnostic Association, looked for the Ministry of Health and Anvisa in order to see how we could actually bring into the countries the first reagents that were being developed as we were speaking at the time. The existing legislation wouldn't allow such innovative and actually recent products without enough stability studies and some other key documents to be registered. So it had to be really considered a kind of a fast track, like an emergency use authorization regulation. And that was indeed what Anvisa took in terms of actions. They created a special regulation for GMP in order to use and rely on other authorities' decisions for issuing GMP certificates for these factories. There was a specific regulation for in vitro diagnostics, the 348, actually giving a maximum of 1 year of validity for the registration and shelf life of 6 months if not enough studies were presented. And several other different regulations were actually being brought into reality, even to authorize access, for instance, as I'm going to see. The key message here, as Alexandre showed, and it's reliance, and Adriana as well. Reliance was, I think, the big lesson we take, is actually to speed up the process and get as fast as possible to the main objective of having access to key products that could make the difference. However, one question remained unanswered, which was the quality. These products were coming to the market. They have had original evaluations, probably not as complete as they should, from the regulators where they were actually responding to. But what about the quality, the performance? In Brazil, thanks to cooperation with the medical societies like clinical pathology, clinical analysis, and the Lab Medical Association, we were able to actually build a whole consortium with over 13 labs from public and private sectors in order to evaluate step by step all the different products that were coming to the market. This was really important because we were able, in this website, you can have this reference for the private and public procurement bodies of what were all the products available, all evaluated under the same protocol, using over 100 samples, positive and negative, in order to give sensitivity, specificity, predictive value, and so on. And this were basically achieved using over 15,000 samples of Brazilian patients in key hospitals. And how it was possible, because these labs are really, they made a fantastic work using their structures in different hospitals, having access to this fantastic panel of real-life panel of patients available. This experience has been shared in many different webinars and discussions with WHO. We had Mariangela Simão also taking part in this very interesting webinar, which is available. And finally, so we reached the issue of access, second, quality, and finally, the discussion of mass testing, how we could actually spread the power of different reagents into the market. If you consider Brazil had already potential of over 6,000 hospitals, 18,000 labs working with different reagents as they were coming to the market. But that was clearly not enough. And so we discussed it with Anvisa, and with a new regulation authorizing drugstores to also execute rapid tests in their premises, we actually opened a new door to eventually 88,000 pharmacies in the whole country. And remember that the pharmacist as a healthcare professional and the pharmacy as a new environment or a node environment for healthcare situations was actually very close to where the patient is, where the citizen is, where actually the invisible person is, the one that normally wouldn't go to a lab and would go to a hospital in the last moment, perhaps too late. So by using this new initiative, we were able, and this is a nice picture from Abrapharma, showing that within their own members, they were monitoring 2,300 pharmacies that had so far tested over 1.2 million tests with a prevalence of 14%. And here in this graph, very recent graph, you show what was the performance of the kit in the market. But you see that, again, people are looking for being tested again, and also the positive rate is increasing. So not only pharmacists, but we would also need, and that's something we are still working on, is the support of companies, private companies that can test their own workers, but also their local communities. With all the information, if we can link everything, as I said, in a network using IT in our favor, we can have epidemiological studies, quite important information to not only to support the individual to work, but also their status and going after tracing eventual contacts. So as a conclusion, what I wanted to share with you is that indeed diagnostics is part of the solution. We always need the right test to be used in the right patient, the right place at the right time. The combination, as Rosanna Peeling showed, of different tests that are available can improve a lot the results and in terms of case detection. And even serology tests, if not being used as much as they were in the beginning, they can really help a lot, especially by mapping out the hotspots of patients. So what I would like to conclude is that indeed, diagnostic can be the best tool for developing public health policies, and several regulatory tools are quite important. Not only reliance, I think it's the best moment we could prove the power of reliance, but also cooperation among all the different stakeholders. This is indeed the key. So thanks a lot, and I'm open to answer eventual questions. Thanks a lot.
Carlos, thank you very much for your sharing. As we're running short in time, I would appreciate if Adriana Velasquez and Alexandra Lim-Gruber would like to share some final comments for this section.
Thank you. I would just like to support what Carlos said. It is really through collaboration that we can achieve the outcomes that we have. And this has been maybe a lesson learned from everybody. We cannot do anything by ourselves, not even WHO, not even the highest income countries. We really need to work together, and to work together with industry, with regulators, with the healthcare workforce, and all together. And also ensure that it goes from the prevention, protection with the PPE, but then early diagnostics, and then to have all the treatment available. And I think we are all learning that we really need to work together to ensure that these pandemics and these emergencies and everything. And so maybe for the future, we will not be working so slowly on other things. So maybe we can do faster many other things, not just for emergencies, but in the real world. So, and I really want to thank the invitation from Carlos and the rest for this meeting, and looking forward to keep on working all together. Over.
Excellent, Adriana. I think just to make a small comment, the experience we had with evaluation of diagnostic kits for COVID with this network and this consortium of 13 public and private labs is something that is going to remain. The experience was very successful. We'll generate many papers to be published, but it's actually something available for any future needs for you, Adriana, in Geneva, in Europe, and Alexandre also for PAHO. We're quite available with the medical associations taking part in this program.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you, Alexandre.
Thank you. Yes, I think I agree with the comments, and I just want to emphasize, and sometimes we consider it very difficult to find a win-win situation, but I think right now we are facing a win-win situation, because the challenges that are posed by the pandemic, and if we look at and I talked this in the last IMDRF meeting, and but I would repeat myself because I really think that the regulatory challenges, I mean, the COVID-19 response, I mean, of course, it's very complex. It involves a series of issues, but let's focus now in our subject on regulatory issues. I think the regulatory authorities have been responding. I mean, this is amazing what the regulatory authorities are doing in this context. But also the industry, we have recognized, I mean, all the efforts, I mean, regarding medical devices and also the vaccines, I mean, health technology in general. I think that it's really a joint effort between the public and private sector, and in order to find solutions, you know. So I think we have to recognize this, and the collaborative efforts, WHO, PAHO, and other regional offices, industry, academics, and regulatory authorities. So I think it's this joint effort has been amazing. I think it's already historical. I mean, it's probably one of the, for this generation, is the biggest health challenge, for sure. And I think it's been even though, I mean, how serious this situation is, I think we are finding solutions that would be not possible at all if there is not a collaborative efforts. So I think I really would like to congratulate the organizers of the meeting. I think it's very important to keep this dialogue, and we really think we are still facing lots of challenges, but in the last 10 months, there's lots of very important achievements we have to recognize and to be proud of, all of us. So thank you very much for the invitation. I didn't have the opportunity to say hi to Adriana, but we are almost every day talking, so it's another one. And to Carlos and to Sandra and Stephen and all the organizers, thank you very much.
And to Rosanna, she is the member of our first stage IBD. So thank you, Rosanna.
Every time you mention everybody, we always forget, but all the organizers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and we are absolutely also counting on a continuous collaboration under this environment that we really are committed to in regards of transparency and compliance. So really, thanks so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity for this much broader collaboration, and look forward to keep strengthening it. So thank you so much. And now we're going to be transferring to our last panel. Renata, the floor is yours, please. Thank you. Renata, probably your mic is closed.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn on my camera. Just a second, but it's not turning on. Oh yeah, now it is. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the very impressive sessions we had previously to this one. We are delighted to welcome now two representatives of governments, of the government of Brazil and the United States. So I'd like to invite Juliana Ghisi Pires and Jennifer Stradman, if you feel comfortable to open your mic and cameras. We are going to shift a little bit from lessons learned and the impact of COVID-19 to good regulatory practice and international trade. We are all very delighted to have Juliana and Jennifer representing both governments, because Brazil and the US have been doing an amazing work at the TBT committee, at the WTO regarding to good regulatory practice, and also among themselves, among both countries. So this session is entitled "The Role of the WTO TBT Agreement and GRPs in Support of Medical Device Regulatory Convergence." So we are going to take all we have heard previously this morning and connect this with international trade. So Juliana, if you'd like to start, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Renata. Hello, everyone. It's very good to have this opportunity to discuss such an important issue for international trade and for the population in general. I think that we still have a challenging world nowadays, and I'm sure that we are in good hands after hearing so much good news and this joint work that everybody is doing through this last month. Well, according to our issue here, we would like to talk a little bit about our agreement on technical barriers to trade by WTO and its relations to GRP, good regulatory practice, as well as market access. First of all, I would like to stress that because of the OECD efforts, we have been hearing so much times different concepts about these issues. Sometimes we hear about international regulatory cooperations, which comprises both GRP, good regulatory practices, and also market access tools. And it's important to share this with you because sometimes we read different expressions to the same issues. According to the TBT, we have both disciplines, some related to GRP and some related to market access. I think that about GRP, the most important pillars are the transparency tools that we have in TBT and the notification process that all members are obliged to do, and the provisions of some time for comments to all stakeholders. So this is the main object. I think that it's the main issue that we have to stress when we are talking to the private sector. It's very important that the private sector are aware of all notifications and also present their comments, especially when it's related to proposals of technical regulations and confirmed assessment procedures, but also after. I think that this is the most important, and that this is how we try to implement domestically these kind of tools when we apply good regulatory practices. We try to, in Brazil recently, we are trying to have more binding obligations related to good regulatory practices through the commitments of our economic freedom law. We have some decrees that by the end of next year, we'll have to all regulators applying regulatory impact analysis and also applying some regulatory management considering
Juliana, I believe you're muted. Your microphone is muted now.
I'm sorry. I don't know what. That's because I talk with my hands and sometimes I touch my keyboard. I'll try to be less Italian because sometimes it happens. I'm sorry. So this is how we nowadays act in Brazil according to good regulatory practices, and also applying TBT disciplines, because we are aware that some regulators in Brazil do not apply regularly those disciplines, but we try hard to get them all applying them, especially the comment period to allow everybody to present their contributions. Another pillar that it's important to stress is harmonization. According to DBT, it's important for all members to follow the relevant international standards, which creates the common basis that may be useful for the market access negotiations that may interest for one, two, or many countries concerning equivalence or even the recognition or acceptance of conformity assessment results. So this is some important tools that we have in TBT, that are related to our discussion today. And more than these tools, it's important to stress something that were commented before, the reliance, the confidence building between the regulators. It's really important to have this enforced by all WTO members. Considering the what we call trade facilitating initiatives or the tools for market access, it's also relevant to stress that we do not have, as in good regulatory practice, a horizontal approach. In many cases, I would say in all the cases, it's important to have a sector approach or even a product approach, because we have different complexities, levels of risks, and even different regulators related to the matter. So we try to have sector specific with the different or the specific regulations when we are talking about market access and regulatory issues. Always respecting what we call the right to regulate, because we want to have a regulatory framework the less costly as possible, but we have to respect that they want to reach the legitimate objectives. So we have to balance these both ingredients considering this kind of discussion. In Brazil, specifically in the medical devices, we have Anvisa, which by the GRP point of view is one of our main benchmarks, internal benchmarks, because they have been applying good regulatory practices for many years. They are really good on that, and we are really proud about the kind of work that Anvisa has been conducting, not only for medical devices, but for all regulated products on their responsible. And also Inmetro, which is our entry point to the TBT. They are responsible for the notifications of all Brazilian regulations in TBT, and also they are regulators and they have some tech tasks considering conformity assessment procedures also. About Anvisa, I'd like to comment that they work not only at WHO and PAHO efforts, but they have been active also at IMD-RF, as commented, as mentioned before, and they are part of the MDSP, which is the single audit for medical devices, which seems that it's a very good and useful tool, consider both the regulator objectives and also some facilitation to the industry, considering that you have one single audit for all the markets that are related to MDSAP. I think that this issue, considering medical devices universe, that is from a needle and something really complex to health support, it's important to have technical discussions in all these issues, and I'm aware that Anvisa has been very active on that. Unfortunately, because of COVID and the national efforts in dealing with the pandemics, they could not be with you today, but I'm sure next opportunity they will be sharing their valuable experience with all the members. I'm afraid that I have only some seconds and we are a little bit on time, so please, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Juliana. This was excellent. And indeed, if we had more time, I think we could be having a whole session with Brazil and the US the entire day. So thank you so much, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to have you. So I turn the mic to you.
Thank you, Renata, and thank you, Juliana. I think Juliana provided a very good overview of the concepts that we discussed in WTO TBT committee. Stephen asked me to come today to talk about the importance of notice and comment in the TBT committee, and I'm also going to give you an overview of some of the things going on within the committee that your group can plug into. I'd also like to note that my colleague, Renee Hansher, who is in charge of our good regulatory practices negotiation, is also on the line, and she's available for questions if needed. You know, going back to the committee, Renata and Sandra and Stephen have come within the last year to the committee with me to kind of get a better idea about what goes on there. And to say very simply, there's a policy discussion, and then there's a discussion about specific measures. And you could almost call me a professional complainer in that sense, because, and not just myself, but also the other members of the committee, in that we have 2 full days of discussions about specific trade concerns. And those trade concerns arise from the notification to the TBT committee of technical measures, including mandatory standards, conformity assessment procedures, technical regulations, and labeling. So one of the things I'd like to emphasize is that anyone interested can follow WTO TBT notifications, and it's easy to sign up to follow them through the tool called ePing. And I've encouraged maybe some follow-up with some of the ePing administrators to give you an in-depth tutorial about how to use that. In the United States, we use a tool called Notify US, and how it comes to us is through an email every day. And we see all the notifications that other members have made, and if there's something that we're interested in, we look into it and get the measure that's proposed and decide whether we're going to comment on it. And to kind of give you an idea of how many notifications come through the WTO, we're receiving over 3,000 notifications annually of different measures that members are proposing for comment. It's almost like an international Federal Register or international gazette that you can plug into and have your voice heard. One thing I'd like to mention is that when we develop comments on these notifications, there is a misconception that your comments go to the WTO. In fact, that is not true. They go to the other member that has provided the notification, or the group of members, because sometimes there is a regional regulation that's being proposed. So, and that information for the United States goes through the US inquiry point. And that inquiry point is located at NIST. I work with the inquiry point every day as we go through a series of interested associations and companies, other government agencies that are interested in particular notifications. We are asking for information from those other members, those other WTO members, and we're also providing comments to those members on the notifications they've made. If we notice that something has not been notified, we also have the ability to ask for that measure to be notified. And we also go through a series of communications regarding those measures. So just to say that it's a very active community of people that we serve in the United States. For about 5,000 recipients of the Notify US. So we have 5,000 viewers into our subscription service, and it's very active. From those 3,000 notifications that we receive in the United States, we make about 300 comments per year. I'm not saying that it's 300 every year. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, but it's usually around that amount. And of those, we are probably bringing up anywhere from 50 to 70 specific trade concerns to other countries in a year. And some of those you might not hear about in the context of the TBT committee because we'll bring them up bilaterally, especially with our FTA partners and those that are interested in having a good trade relationship with us. We will keep those interests bilateral. It's only when something is very serious that we might bring something up on the floor of the TBT committee. And then we try to do so when the measure is proposed versus when it's final. It's very important to have the comments from the industry or the other any concerned party in the United States when we are making these complaints. Because if we do not comment during the proposed comment period, it is extraordinarily difficult for us to complain. Because the first thing that the other member will say is, well, did you provide comments to us during the open notification period? And if the answer is no, we don't have much room to say anything. But if the answer is yes, then we have all the ability to leverage the agreement to ensure that the most trade facilitative regulation is being put into place that's friendly to the interests of our manufacturers. So this is why it's so important to comment, and we'd be all more than happy to provide any kind of tutorial into any interest that any of your members have here. So that's the first thing. I just mentioned, like with the example of the EU Medical Device Directive, we did notice it's been on their agenda for over a year, and many members have been raising it, including the US, Canada, Korea, Japan, China, and Mexico. And it's because we noticed at an early stage that there weren't going to be enough notified bodies for the MDR and the IVDR. And so we have been working with the EU, and we've seen some incremental progress. They know that we're watching the amount of notified bodies that are being put into place, and so this is one of the issues that's in the TBT committee agenda, where there's an active international coalition, and any of your issues could be put in, into this kind of situation if they were serious and it was needed. So just to mention that in the hemisphere that we do have a lot of cooperation in the hemisphere on medical devices and medical device issues. And I would say some of the strongest partners are Canada, the United States, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, Colombia, and Peru. We tend to have a lot of cooperation with those countries when it comes to the subject. So that's what I wanted to say about notifications, and happy to follow up with you in any way. And then the other two things just to touch on is that we are in the middle of the 9th triennial review of the TBT agreement. And every 3 years, the membership reviews the agreement and makes proposals that are usually voluntary, but the intent is that everyone is implementing the agreement and no one is 100% implemented. So it's a way to bring members together on ideas that would improve the implementation of our agreement. Good regulatory practices is included as a feature, a regular feature of the triennial review. And as Brazil proposed last review, which was 3 years ago, one result is that we now have an annual GRP conference at the very first meeting of every year. So if your interests on good regulatory practice intersect with TBT, this is a place for you to make proposals to your governments and make suggestions about how we pursue the review, which has just started and will last within the next year until the end of November 2021. And then finally, I'd just say there's definitely a top-down initiative in the WTO on COVID-19, trying to help the pandemic. And this is a multi-faceted approach in that it's not only the TBT committee that is subject to discussions on COVID-19, something that's happening WTO-wide. And the TBT and SPS committees are very important to this initiative because of the notifications that members are making, whether they are regular notifications or if they're emergency notifications because of the pandemic. And so there's already a TBT SPS tracking database, and I expect that there will be more initiative within the context of triennial review and also coming from places like the bodies that govern the WTO, like the General Council or the Committee on Trade and Goods, which is our parent committee. So I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those three activities, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Juliana, would you like to make any comment? I saw you, no? Okay, so it's impressive. Okay, thank you so much, both of you. I don't know if we have questions, but I would like to add just that we are like the reason that we really wanted Brazil and the US to be here today is because they have been active players in the TBT and GRP in Geneva and in their domestic environments, and also to bring this topic closer to all of us in the coalition. We are really trying to make this effort to show how e-ping works. So we are preparing videos also in Spanish to upload on their website, but there are a lot of videos already in the internet and WTO website. Also, we are trying to make everything very accessible to the members and show that it's not so hard to use the systems that each country has with the inquiry points, with the authorities. So thank you very much for your comments here today. I think that was very enlightening for everyone watching. I don't know if you would like to make any final comments, Juliana or Jennifer. Juliana, yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to stress that most of you are lucky because the IMS has the 3 languages, which is French, English, and Spanish, which make it easier for you than in Brazil. In Brazil, we had to develop, in Metro, our inquiry point had to develop a tool to translate those notifications into Portuguese in order to facilitate to the private sector, which is the Alerta Exportador. So please use the IMS if you are one of these language speakers, because it's easier actually. But if you wanna know, you have in Portuguese the Alerta Exportador. And also I'd like to stress that including our activities in Geneva and domestically, we also try to negotiate DRP disciplines in our trade agreements. And recently, we have managed to have a protocol, an annex on with the US, and we are sure that it will be synergic to our domestic efforts related to DRP for the next few years.
Excellent. Thank you for these comments. And also I'd like to mention that it is in our website, but it is in the WTO website, the recording of the session that Jennifer mentioned in February on GRP, where we were there. So this is all available content for you all. And we are happy to help also individually in case you have any further topics you'd like to discuss on GRP and trade. Thank you so much. Sandra, I pass the word to you for concluding remarks, and thank you very much again, Juliana and Jennifer.
Thank you, Renata. Thank you, Juliana and Jennifer. So really, the only thing that is left is that we really want to thank all of our panelists. We do certainly appreciate your contributions and also acknowledge and applaud the shared commitment to continue working together to advance on regulatory convergence. We also want to thank all the attendees for joining this event, which will be posted at the Coalition's website in the forthcoming days, so we can all benefit out of this and we can share that with our community so we can continue this learning journey together. Thank you also to the Technical Secretariat of the Coalition for their contributions to put together this session. And just to close, have a great rest of the day and wish you all continue keeping healthy and safe. Until the next time, thank you.